What's up guys, Jesse here from JPModified. I'd like to take you along with me through another busy day today. We got a couple of things to do. We have a repair on a distro plate that we did several years ago. We also need to fill up a build that I featured last week. We need to do a maintenance build, or we need to do some maintenance work on a build, and we need to turn on a build that we just finished yesterday. So I was leak testing, so today we're gonna finally turn it on. So another thing I have to mention is I've been plagued by two rats, one medium-sized one and then one tiny one that's been in the shop. So I bought some rat poison, and then I sprinkled it all over behind the things that the rats usually, or where the rats usually go. They go behind the laser machine, they go behind my 3D printer, they go behind some of my shelves back there. So I put rat poison there. Now, fast forward to today, when I came in the shop, it smelled bad. So it smelled like probably got one of the rats, or hopefully both of them. But the problem is, I don't know where the smell is coming from. So after today's work, I'm gonna have to most probably flip the shop upside down and look for the carcass or something, because the shop really smells horrible and it's giving me a headache. So this is a distro plate that we did, I think about 3 to 4 years ago. I'm not sure if I remember correctly, but yeah, this is one of the earlier distro plates I've made. This one was for an ROG Helios case. This is a floor distro plate, which that you put on top of the PSU bay area. The client had had his PC serviced at another place, our good friends over at Specs computer shop, because at the time he wanted this serviced, my shop was already full and there was no way I could fit his PC, especially the Helios, because the Helios is a very heavy case. Now in the shop I only have one table that can support that kind of weight. So Specs Computer Shop is one of the shops I trust when it comes to servicing builds that I have built. So the issue here is they serviced the PC. However, when they took apart the water block, or the distro plate, one of the O-rings snapped. So when they leak tested it, I think it was leaking from some part here based on what I see. Now, the big issue with this project is I no longer use these O-rings. I don't use this size of O-rings, not because they're unreliable. They're just too thin for me to to glue back together. So I have a hard time. Me and my old eyes have a hard time trying to glue both ends together. So I switched over to a thicker O-ring. I think this one is 1.5, I think. Whatever the case may be, I switched over to a thicker O-ring so it'd be easier for me to glue together. Since I don't have any more of these O-rings, I'm gonna have to open this up, and I'm going to have the CNC reslot the O-ring path according to the size of the O-ring I currently use now. I already edited the file on Fusion 360 last week. I'm going to take this apart, set up the CNC, and repair this bad boy. Alright, so I've successfully taken it apart. That was a lot of screws. Now this is about 80. Back then when I started making these distro plates, I was kind of overly paranoid with the amount of screws I put behind, or the amount of screws that circle around or that go around the channels. Now that I have gained some experience, I wouldn't have done it this way. These are too many screws. But yeah, it's just a real pain to service if you have that many screws. So one thing I did come across though is I forgot to make these bigger, or this part here bigger. I'm going to go back to the room, input this one. I can no longer do my work on that PC because that PC over there is still Windows 10 and Fusion 360 is not running on Windows 10 anymore. So Look at that perfectly boiled egg. So a lot of people don't know this about me, but I have lived many different lives. There was a time in my life where food was a luxury. Eggs was the ultimate survival food for me sometimes, because back then one hard-boiled egg would only cost, I think, 5 pesos. So one hard-boiled egg would get me through a few hours, throughout the day. Down the hatch. God, Jesus. Now, off camera, I wasted about 30 minutes trying to look for the power supply, or my external power supply that powers my pump, or the water pump on my CNC. But I found it now, so the CNC is running. So there are a lot of things that I don't want to happen today. I hope messing or screwing this one up is not going to be one of them. Let's check out the O-rings. All right, to fit perfect. And then there's just enough on the top, left on the top, for it to compress when we put on the lid. So, all right, here we are. The O-ring seems to fit in very nicely right there. Okay, 3,854 screws later, I finally reassembled it with the new O-rings. I'm going to leak test it now and see if it passes the pressure test. Alright, so I think there must be something wrong with my pressure tester, because it wouldn't hold any pressure. So I checked out the O-rings. The O-rings seem to be all compressed, and compressed really well. This one kind of looks odd because this is a stain that I couldn't remove. I think it's embedded in the acrylic, but everywhere else there are no gaps, and the O-ring has compressed pretty well. Or I put in some coolant and some dye, and then I blew some air into it to simulate, like, flowing, and then nothing leaked out. So must be my pressure tester. So I'm going to test out all the other channels here and then see how it works. If I don't see any leaks, by putting water inside, I'm going to have to deduce that something's wrong with my air pressure tester. So see, even from behind, all the O-rings seem intact. They seem compressed. Okay, so this is what I mean about putting water inside and pressure testing. So I put water inside and just left just enough room for me to kind of pressurize it a little bit. See? And my pressure tester just drops back down. Nothing comes out of the cracks or anywhere. Now there are a couple of things. These little discolorations. These aren't watermarks though. These aren't leak marks. These are from the acrylic being pushed together. So they were already there before I put in the coolant. The reason why also I put in some color is so because if I put in the pressure, I would see where the leaks would come from. So let's check it from behind. Let's see, look. No water. No leakage. I think this should be fine. Alright, so here's how I can tell something's definitely wrong with my leak tester. This one's a water block that I freshly took off. Absolutely no issues, no leaks. But when I pump it, so yeah, something's definitely wrong with this pressure tester. So alright, so that means I'm going to have to cross my fingers and send this back to my friend and see if he can put it back together and then give me feedback if it leaks or not, because there's no way I can test this. I don't have a pump, so the only way we're gonna tell or we're gonna know is see if it leaks on their end or not. If it does, you're gonna have to send it back. All right, next order of business, we're gonna power this one up for the first time and see if everything works. Now, one of the reasons why I didn't power it up yesterday is because while I was filling, the hose kind of missed its mark at the top. So instead of pouring it straight to the reservoir, I accidentally spewed water all over power supply. So little stuff got into the GPU and stuff like that, so I had to wait overnight for it to fully dry. So all right, successful boot. See the Oris logo. One fan doesn't have light on, but I'll check that out later. It should be an easy connection. Okay, that problem's gone. So all I need to do left is get this one to run. I tested it out of a separate, power supply yesterday. It turned on. Alright, so apparently another thing I didn't notice, or I just noticed, is the monitor doesn't work anymore. So I'm gonna have to see how I'm gonna fix this. Alright, so apparently this thing is dead. I've worked with these monitors before, and you will see LED turning on here, but there's none. I tried both sockets, and there's nothing. Power button doesn't work, so there's nothing. Yeah, this thing's shot. I moved it to a different USB port, but I'm gonna have to call up the owner or the client and ask him if it's already been like this. I don't see how it just got damaged here. I carefully took this thing apart. Alright, at least I got the flow meter to work again. So the only thing left is the monitor. So I texted the owner and asked him if it was already not working. I'm testing it right now on a separate power source, or a different power source. This is also a different cable. But yeah, there's nothing. I've used this monitor before, and there's always a light here. Alright, so I finished talking to the owner. So apparently he didn't notice if it was working or not. So if he wasn't able to notice if it was functioning, it was probably not. So I'm just gonna put this back on, and I'm gonna leave this on. I'm not gonna take it off, because if I take it off, then there'll be a hole. So okay, powering it on one more time. Alright, so that's working. Front fans are working. Alright, so here it is. It's finally on. 6 o'clock in the evening. So everything's good to go and ready to go home. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention it. If you guys noticed that originally the tubes were black. Now the reason why I changed it is because once your tubes warp like this, they slip out of your fittings very easily and leaks. So now the reason for that is, again, I'm using PETG, or I used PETG on this build. And then the radiator got stuck or got clogged up with dust, and it wasn't dissipating as it was supposed to. So and the hotter water temperatures caused the tubes to warp like this. Alright, so next order of business is this build. Client checked this in for maintenance because he's going to put it up for sale. He recently downsized his build onto an ITX build, so he needed something a little bit more portable. So I was putting up this one for sale. I'm gonna clean this up. Alright, so like in my previous vlog, when I showed how to drain a water cooling system, I start off by emptying the reservoir first. I really personally don't like to put in drain systems on any of the loops I do, because one, it adds to the cost, and plus it kind of looks weird, so to me. So I start the whole process by inserting this tube here all the way down inside the flat reservoir. Okay, the tube's in all the way down, and then all I need to do is just put this in. There you go. So once that's empty, it's a little bit easier for me to control whatever drippage I get from emptying the tubes. Okay, so now that the reservoir is empty, I'm going to remove this tube here. Next is I take out whatever water is left in the tube by just tilting it a little. so it's easier for me to install the thing. It goes right down there. Place the stop plug over the 90-degree fitting there to where this used to be connected to. Since I'm using black tubes, there's no way for me to see how much water is left in this tube. So what I'm gonna do right now, or what I did basically, is reattach the fittings and connected it to a female to female adapter. So I'm just gonna plug in the manual pump over to this side right here and start blowing. So basically what you're going to see right now was I'm pumping in the water from the radiators, and the water blocks slowly go back into the reservoir. See, as you can see there, goes in, and then I'm going to set that out and then keep doing the process, or repeating the process until it's pretty much as empty as I can get it. Okay, so after about 2 repeats, I've managed to extract an additional, or this additional amount of water inside. So there's still water inside the loop for sure, but at least it'll be, easier for me to control with just tissues and clear out everything else, or flush out everything else. So here we are. I've managed to remove all the tubes and with little spillage. So that's it, folks. That's how you drain a loop if your water cooling loop does not have a drain valve. Very minimal spillage. Again, very controllable by tissues. There will still be water up in the on this top rad, so I covered it with tissue down here. That's basically it. I'm gonna first remove the radiators and then remove the GPU and the water block. CPU block, and then clean it up. Now, going back to this build, I kind of put this in the back burner or in the parking lot for a bit because I made a separate build video for this. I kind of want to move forward with filling and everything else and finishing this build on a separate video. So after I finish this maintenance job here, I'm going to continue with this build. So I think I'm going to have to call it a day. 4 eggs through the whole day can only get you so far. So I spent most of my time trying to fix that distro plate. Although on video probably it looked easy and it looked quick, but it was not at all. I had to disassemble that thing like about 4 times because of, of the issue with my air pressure tester. And then there were about like 80 screws. To take it apart would be 80 screws, to put it back together would be 80 screws. And then I did that 4 times. So yeah, that took a lot of time. And in between the time I disassembled it and reassembled it, I had to think about other things that, figure out how it was leaking or why it was leaking. It took a lot of my time, a huge chunk of my time. I started in the morning, or no, not in the morning, about lunchtime. It took me basically the whole afternoon. It's about 7 o'clock in the evening, and usually I end my day around 6 o'clock. So I could keep going, but there are a lot of things I need to do inside the room with my PC. I am designing something, a res pump for a client, a client of mine, which I have to start machining tomorrow. So I have to finish that design today. Anyhow, tomorrow, the continuation of everything I was doing today will have to be on a separate video. But yeah, that's basically it. That's kind of like a day in my life. There's a lot of work that goes behind the results that we post. I know that us modders, we only post like final shots or pictures, but there's tons and tons of work that goes behind each and every photo that we post. So I hope in this way, doing this vlog thing, I could show you that a modder's life is not as easy as you think. So many things are involved into, making a custom PC. So if you really think about it, the PCs that we build here at JPModified and other modders in the Philippines like Tantric or Mad Mods, we don't build straight cookie cutter builds like a lot of, the regular builders do. But here, there's a lot of planning, necessary steps that go in between what we do. Because again, our builds are not technically custom builds, but they're super ultra custom builds. So we tailor our builds not only according to whatever the budget the client has, we tailor it aesthetically into the client's interest. Today was a pretty long day. I'll continue tomorrow. My camera is also running out of battery, so even if I did continue, I don't think I would be able to document it anyway. So still a lot of other things I need to finish. There's a custom water cooling loop for a friend, Brian, that I need to finish at least before Christmas. So once again, this has been Jesse of JPModified. See you on the next video.